the prayer that she have an easy and gentle visit, that the treatment be successful, and that Christine's mum is cared for by the compassionate care of our holy Guru Geshe Loden. And so we can reflect like that for a short time. Begin with the usual introductory prayers, which we'll do in both Tibetan and English, except for the final offering prayer. So I'll begin with the prayer of praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. Tempa Chandende de Shin Shepa Trachampa Yangdapa Zope Sanje Ripa Dan Shapsu Tempa Dewa Shepa Jiten Champa Chebudo E Kalo Jua Lana Mepa Ladang Minam Chitampa Sanje Chandende Peljawa Shakya Dubala Shasalo Chodo Chapsu Chiwo. Teacher, Bhagawan, Tathagata, Arhat, perfectly pure and complete Buddha, all-knowing, having poise, Sugata, apprehender of the world, navigator of beings to be subdued, incomparable, teacher of gods and humans, to the Buddha, the Bhagawan, the glorious conqueror Shakyamuni, we prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. Sangichodam Sochi Chodam La Jangcho Bado Danye Chao Suchi Dage Jin Soji Peso Namji Drola Penshi Sangye Dropa Shok. To the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I go for refuge until becoming enlightened. Through the merit of my generosity and so on, may I achieve Buddhahood to benefit all beings. To the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha, I go for refuge until becoming enlightened. Through the merit of my generosity and so on, may I achieve Buddhahood to benefit all beings. O Saji Pochi Kyokjin Me Totram Lera Lenjeniere Jenpari Sangye Jendo Mente Uadi Roken Namda Jemla Chubasho. It's crowned and anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers. Mount Meru, the four continents, adorned with sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered thus, may all beings enjoy such pure lands. I prostrate my three doors with a mind of respect and offer all actually arranged and mentally emanated offerings. I reveal all the downfalls and negativities that I have ever collected and rejoice in the virtues of individuals and superiors. Please remain perfectly abiding until samsara is no longer seen. I request you to turn into vast and profound wheels of Dharma. I dedicate the virtues of myself and others to the great enlightenment. And lineage prayer. Unso gele cheve trompeco, taie drove rewa confesso, malo sheja jishin zekpeto, shache tso de la gochaza, dame tampa de se chicho, jave se pa conchi gona. Dame shendo tope nambo me pam jampe yang la shabsalo shendo papa kava javeyu yishin gangpa jose zamlirye lodro tome chene sasumna yang sudrape jabla dakcha Jinta Jambo Nile Shupe Samotawa Jachen Chupe Mano Yang Su Zupe Nedupe Tampe Zin Mame Zeladu Dojo Konji Longji Nezupe Jijin Zijin Sevedum Se Jalve tamcho malu zinpai, lozandrape pela shalzalo, rabjam somra kunla taveme, kelzang tapa drupe jumojo, zeve jupe tapke zepai, salse genyen namla gucha. Body born from a million magnificent excellent virtues, speech fulfilling the hopes of infinite beings, a mind that sees all objects in knowledge precisely. I bow my head to the chief among the Shakyas, supreme sons of the incomparable teacher, carrying the load of all the conqueror's deeds by their emanations appearing in countless realms. I prostrate to my throne and Jushu. The mother of conquerors is difficult to fathom. The precise thought is in commentaries written by Jambuvipa's ornaments, Nagarjuna and Asanga. I prostrate at the feet of those most renowned in the three realms. From these two great chariots come the excellent lineages of the paths of profound view and vast deeds, their essential points gathered thoroughly and without fault. Prostration to the lamp holding this treasure of instruction. Giving explanation through compassion, by seeing precisely and completely the essential points of all paths of Sutra and Tantra, the holder of the conqueror's entire holy Dharma, prostration to the glorious Sangha. I, seeing all the infinite teachings, supreme way of crossing for those entering the journey to liberation, moved by compassion to deeds skilled in method, prostrations to the spiritual masters who make everything clear. And Great Treasury of Excellence in English on page 27. The kind master is the basis of all qualities, and proper alliance is the root of the path. By seeing this excellence and through much striving, bestow blessings to be devoted with great respect. This gentle support of freedom obtained this one time is most difficult to achieve. Knowing its great value gives rise to a mind seizing its essence constantly day and night. Bestow blessings to generate this continuum unceasingly. It is like a bubble in water, this constantly moving body and light, body and shadow, white and black karmic results follow after. By gaining firm certainty in this, the massive faults, subtle and very subtle, are abandoned, and the accomplishment of all virtuous collections completed. Bestow blessings to ever attain conscientiousness. Bestow blessings to develop a great aspiration for the bliss of liberation. By that pure thought, great conscientiousness is drawn forth, and mindfulness and awareness of the individual liberation, the root of the teachings. Bestow blessings to make this the essential practice. Just as I myself have fallen into samsara's ocean, all living beings as mother are also like that. By bestow blessings to train with strong effort in the vows of conqueror sons. pacifying distraction toward perverse objects by way of proper analysis of the perfect meaning, bestow blessings to swiftly and continuously generate the path related to the union of calm abiding and special insight, thus becoming a vessel trained in the common paths, and to the Vajrayana to protect them even at risk of life. Then, by understanding properly the important points, which are the essence of the two stages of the Tantra classes, bestow blessings to practice according to these holy teachings, with continuous effort in the supreme four-session yoga. Like that, may the spiritual friend revealing the gentle path, and the friends of proper practice stand firm, bestow blessings to quickly pacify the masses of outer and inner hindrances. In all rebirths may never be parted from perfect gurus, and the enjoyment of the glorious Dharma. By utterly completing all qualities, paths, and grounds, may I quickly achieve the state of Bhakti-Dharma. We'll begin with a meditation on the first of the four immeasurables, the immeasurable of love, and we'll cover the 4 points of the meditation of immeasurable love, as Geshe explains on page 153 of Path to Enlightenment. So we take a moment to set our bodily posture. With our back straight but comfortable. Head slightly tilted forward. Eyes half open, half closed. Hands folded in the lap. Right hand on the left palm, with the thumb tips touching. Shoulders level, arms extended out slightly from the body at the elbow. Mouth, jaw and tongue held naturally, relaxed. And take a few moments to stabilise our mind through breathing meditation. Allowing our awareness to withdraw from the fields of the senses, all external objects. Also releasing internal objects, such as memories of the past, plans or speculation about the future. For this time, we aim to remain fully in the present moment. As our awareness gathers, centres, and settles on just one object, the natural rise and fall of our breath. Then meditate on the wish of immeasurable love. Reflecting how wonderful it would be if all living beings were to have happiness continuously and the cause of happiness. So starting with our own lives, actually imagine what this would be like. Bring to mind the person or people closest to us, dearest to us. How wonderful it would be if they were continuously happy, no matter what. And they had the causes to be continuously happy, continuously, without end. Protected from everything by their own mind of happiness. We can extend the thought by bringing to mind people that we might work with or otherwise associate with. How wonderful it would be if their lives were simply a story of happiness, continuously. This wouldn't be just those who are close to us, or those we associate with. Even a person that we come across fleetingly, all of them, without exception. How wonderful it would be if their lives were framed and powered by continuous inner happiness, true happiness. How wonderful it would be if those who are currently sick who experience hunger or thirst, whose lives are threatened by violence, fear or anxiety. How wonderful if instead of their current experience, they only had happiness and the cause of happiness. Next, we can contemplate the aspiration of immeasurable love. So this is a stronger feeling, not just how wonderful it would be if every living being had happiness and a cause of happiness. May this actually be so. May those who are dear and close to us achieve continuous, pure happiness. In every day of their life, in every situation. And because their wish for happiness is no different from my own, or from those close to me, may all strangers likewise experience continuous happiness. May this come to pass through dependent arising. Also those we find difficult. Because again, they have the same basic wish as we do, as those close to us do, as all beings do. Only to experience happiness. So may this come to pass. May every human being everywhere experience happiness and the cause of happiness. May every non-human being, all animals for example, continuously experience happiness and the cause of happiness. Next, we can contemplate the pure superior intention of immeasurable love. Thinking, I myself will cause all living beings to have happiness and the cause of happiness. While I don't have this capability now, all Buddhas have taught, all Bodhisattvas have taught, all the great teachers of our era have taught, including our kind teacher, Geshe Acharya Thubten Loden, that this is definitely possible through cause and effect, through dependent arising. Step by step, in our daily activities, we can continuously practice benefit for others. Continuously find ways to practice the various forms of generosity. Material, generosity of time, being supportive, good advice and love. We can develop our ethics or non-harmfulness. Through mindfulness, doing everything we can to avoid any harm to other living beings. Through carelessness, irritation, insensitivity or whatever. We have so many opportunities to practice patience. Patience with people we find difficult. Patience with situations we find difficult. Patience with our Dharma practice. Each time we practice like this, it is a cause for developing the perfection of patience. So by this method, as described in Path to Enlightenment, I myself can eliminate my obstacles, develop my capabilities, and through this I myself can bring all living beings to happiness and the cause of happiness. I can actualise the wish of immeasurable love and the aspiration of immeasurable love. Next, we can reflect on the prayer of immeasurable love. So turning our mind to all Buddhas, Bodhisattvas and holy beings, especially our kind gurus, the great teachers of our era. Please bless me, please inspire me practice like this. To develop the pure aspiration to bring happiness and the cause of happiness to all living beings, and to actualize that aspiration. Please bless me, inspire me and guide me like this. So we can make this prayer to holy beings such as Shakyamuni Buddha, Mother Tara, the liberator of beings, Manjushri, the essence of all Buddha's wisdom, Maitreya, the essence of all Buddha's love, the great lineage teachers such as Lama Tsongkhapa, the holy beings of our own time and experience, such as His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Venerable Geshe Acharya Thubten Loden, through your power, please bless and inspire myself and all living beings. Through your power, I quickly develop all good qualities. My kindness, my great compassion, my great love, my bodhicitta, my wisdom, especially liberation and enlightenment. Through this, may all living beings, without exception, experience happiness and the cause of happiness. We can release our attention and complete the meditation. So it's been a couple of weeks since the last class, because we had the retreat last weekend. So I'll do a little bit of a recap. So we're going through part 4 of the Path to Enlightenment, which covers the medium scope teachings, and these are centered on the subject of the Four Noble Truths, which is also the main subject of last week's retreat. And briefly, the Four Noble Truths firstly explain true sufferings, or the way that any experience of a being in psychic existence ultimately can only be unsatisfactory. True cause, why that is, so why we experience psychic existence and its faults, and where that comes from, what the causes of that are. True cessation, that it's possible to change that. So given that we can understand that psychic existence is an experience produced by causes, if we are able to reverse or change those causes, then the result of psychic existence can come to an end. And true path, the actual method of doing that, the actual minds that we generate, or true pathway minds that we generate in order to oppose psychic existence and to undo psychic existence, and the methods for developing those states of mind. So the first noble truth, true sufferings, and one of the questions that we looked at a couple of weeks ago was, why is there so much emphasis on suffering? Why do we focus on it? And really that the only point of doing that is to eliminate suffering. The only point of contemplating true sufferings is to be able to attain the third noble truth, true cessations, which is the actual aim of our Dharma practice. Why do we need to reflect on true sufferings, given that we all know about suffering? It's something that's manifest to all of us, one way or another. We all experience suffering, and we can see it in so many different ways. And the answer from a Buddhist point of view is that while we experience suffering, we have limited insight into how it actually works, and we certainly don't really have insight into what we can do about it. Even though we experience suffering, we continuously go through the illusion that if we can change one or two things in our life, well then everything will be fine. We don't see that the true nature of psychic existence, that we're caught in a cycle whereby this experience of things ultimately being unsatisfactory, ultimately not being able to give us lasting, reliable security and satisfaction, that we're continuously repeating this pattern. In Path to Enlightenment, the medium scope, we've talked about the fact that it's discussed in 4 parts, and I won't go through the full outline again because I've done that previously in a bit of detail. But it's on page 379, and the biggest section of those 4 parts is called the actual training, and it has 2 main areas of discussion. So the first is about identifying the mind aspiring for liberation, that is, identifying the mind that wants to be done with psychic existence and hence wants to be done with suffering. And that's covered in chapter 12. So between them, Pam and Anna have also previously gone through that. The second main subject within the actual training is the method for generating that. So how do we actually develop this mind that genuinely, in a heartfelt way, aspires for liberation? And there are two ways of doing that, or 2 methods that we use in order to do that. The first of which is to contemplate the nature of suffering and its sources. So that covers the first 2 noble truths, suffering the first and its sources being the second. And secondly, by contemplating the 12 dependent links, which we'll come to in a few weeks' time. But at the moment, we're looking at the first of those, so contemplating suffering and its sources. And obviously, suffering and its sources, that has 2 parts. The first that we're dealing with at the moment is contemplating suffering so that we properly understand the disadvantages of psychic existence. And that's covered in chapter 13 of Path to Enlightenment. That in itself has 2 parts. So firstly, there's an explanation of why it is that the Buddha in particular taught suffering first of the 4 noble truths. So why didn't he, for example, teach the truth? Why didn't he, for example, teach the cessation of suffering first, or the cause of suffering first? So Anna has gone through that in some detail, and then we turn to look at the actual explanation of suffering. That again is explained in two different ways. So the first is by explaining the general sufferings of psychic existence, and this is about the types of experience that any living being in psychic existence is likely to experience. It's likely to be a characteristic of their lives, one way or another. The second subject is the specific sufferings of psychic existence. So this is about sufferings that are specific to certain types of rebirth within psychic existence. So again, we'll come to that a little bit later. So we're looking at the general sufferings of psychic existence, and that's explained in three different ways. So firstly, there's an explanation of 8 different types of experience. Next, an explanation of 6 different types of experience. And lastly, an explanation of 3 different types of experience. So these are different ways of thinking about psychic existence. They're not inconsistent, so they overlap. And we might wonder why it would be that we have all of these different classifications. If we really want to understand suffering, wouldn't it be enough just to look at the 8, for example? And the reason for this is that we really need to be experts in the very nature of our own experience. If we contemplate the way psychic existence works from a number of different angles, and especially if we study them, and meditate on them, then we develop a much deeper and more extensive understanding of the ways in which psychic existence is unsatisfactory. And more importantly, it starts to influence the way that we interpret the events in our own life and the way we respond to the events in our own life. And doing that, once we start applying this understanding to what's happening to us day by day, year by year, that's the basis of developing renunciation. When we really get the picture, that's when we start developing the genuine sense, I need to do something about this. Because looking at it through this framework, I can see that this sort of thing is happening over and over and over again. And not only is it happening for me, it's also happening with all of the people that I care about, with all of the people that I don't care about. Every being is going through this same sort of experience. So gradually, through looking at it, thinking about it, all of these different ways, we're building a framework that means that we begin to have a more intuitive as opposed to intellectual understanding of what's going on. Last time we went through the first 4 of the 8 sufferings of psychic existence, which are birth, aging, sickness and death. And so today we'll go through the next 4, and I expect we'll get a start on the set of 6 sufferings as well. So each of these 8, in distinction to some of the explanations in the 6 and the 3, each of these are things that we would instantly and easily recognise as suffering. We would recognise them as adverse experiences. The 8th one is a little bit more difficult to understand, or it takes more contemplation and analysis to understand it, but the other 7 are things that we can immediately relate to. We can immediately think of examples in our own life that are covered by these descriptions. So the first 4, they're all, if you like, about different types of life event. So birth, aging, sickness, and death. The next 3 aren't linked so much to particular events within our life, but rather they relate more to the way that our mind works. And they cover difficult experiences in life that can take a whole host of different forms. And the interesting thing about these, or what they highlight, is the fact that from a Buddhist perspective, this type of experience or this type of potential to experience suffering isn't something out there. It's not that we simply come into contact with external circumstances that are difficult for us. It's actually embedded in the very way that our mind functions at a conventional level. And that's really illustrated well by the first of the ones that we're going to look at, that is meeting the unpleasant, which is the fifth category within the 8 types of suffering. So I've talked a little bit already, so I won't go into full detail about one description within the Buddhist system of the mind under Abhidharma, which divides the mind up into primary minds or general minds and mental factors. And mental factors are basically activities of the mind or functions of mind. There are 5 of those mental factors that are referred to as omnipresent or all accompanying. And what that means is that in any moment of mind, any moment of consciousness, these types of functions are always happening. So from the moment that this life started until the moment that this life ends, everything that we experience will be mediated by these 5 types of function. And 3 of those that are particularly relevant when we're talking about the subject of meeting the unpleasant are the mental factors of discrimination, contact, and feeling. So every moment we are discriminating objects. If we didn't discriminate objects, then everything would just be an undifferentiated field of sensory data. So if we didn't discriminate visual objects, for example, well then everything would just be a complete soup of shape and colour, and we wouldn't experience any distinct objects within it. Because we have a mental factor of discrimination, we effectively identify coherent objects within that data field. The factor of contact, the mental factor of contact, provides that once we've identified objects, then we classify them based on experience, and in particular based on karma, as being either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And based on having identified an object as pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral through the mental factor of contact, then the mental factor of feeling arises. And if contact has engaged with an unpleasant object, well then the mental factor that we have is unhappiness or dislike or wish to avoid. If contact identifies an object that we label as pleasant, well then the mental factor of happiness, enjoyment, or satisfaction arises. And if our contact engages with an object that we don't label either way, then the feeling of indifference or perhaps boredom arises. So this is happening all the time with every object that we engage in. It's a basic function of the mind. The mental factor of feeling is actually the way that we experience karma. So sometimes karma, we might think of it as being some strange, cosmic, weird, mystical force, but the way karma actually functions in our lives is in terms of the mental factors of feeling that we experience in relation to the objects that we discriminate and that we then contact. Objects that we label as pleasant, that have pleasant feelings, then we wish to go on experiencing those objects more, or to go on experiencing them. If we label them as unpleasant, if they give rise to unhappy mental feeling, well then that motivates us to want to stop experiencing them, to either, for example, to distance ourselves or avoid the object that we've labelled as unpleasant. So this is basically the fundamental, or at least conventionally, infrastructure of our experience. This is the way that we react to every object, to every experience that's presented to us. And the basic dynamic that underlies it is karma. because of karma, one person may experience one object as extremely pleasant, delightful, while another person can experience exactly the same object as extremely unpleasant. So, for example, there are people who love Donald Trump. So in the US, there are people who are absolutely hanging out for him to be the next president of the United States. And when they see him, they see a person who's a stable genius, as a saviour of America, one who stands up for the common person against the elites. So for those people, and you can see, you can go on the internet and see them expressing this view very convincingly. There's no doubt that they genuinely believe this. From their point of view, their karma is discriminating this object, and from their point of view, that object is a very pleasant object, and it produces a feeling of pleasantness when they see Donald Trump. Those who dislike Donald Trump have the basic same raw sensory data. So they're seeing this human-shaped object with orange hair, and the way that they relate to that object is a negative experience. So they see that very same object that other people adore as being somebody who is divisive and dangerous. And they feel that if this person were to become the US president again, that would be a disastrous result. For those who are indifferent, so they have no interest in politics or whatever, they look at him and sort of think, oh, who is this guy anyway? Oh, was he the president or something? All of these different experiences, different perspectives, happiness or unhappiness or indifference to seeing Donald Trump come from individual karma. And our feelings are the way that we actually experience karma. That's why we have the regular experience of meeting with the unpleasant. Because while caught in psychic existence, we're going to continuously experience innumerable objects, and the way that our mind works is that some of those contact will designate in our individual case as unpleasant, and when we contact them, well, then that will give an experience of dislike, a wish to avoid, and so forth. That's basically how our mind works at the moment. It isn't how our mind has to work. It isn't that we're doomed to experience things this way, but while we have a mind driven by delusion and karma, this basic dynamic of karma is going to produce this type of experiences. So these are experiences. They might be things of the type that are already covered in the first four, so things such as sickness or aging, which genuinely none of us like, we find unpleasant. They might be things like somebody treating us really badly, speaking to us rudely, being threatening to us. Things like being a victim of crime. Somebody robs us, we lose our job, we're caught in a bushfire, we lose our phone, whatever, whether it's a major irritation, a major disruption to our life, or a minor one, these types of experiences that we label as unpleasant continuously get bowled up at us. We'd never ever, if we could program our life exactly, write the script, we'd never have any of these experiences. But while we are in psychic existence, we can't, because our own mental dynamics are going to produce these experiences of things that we don't like. From a Buddhist point of view, this same pattern of meeting the unpleasant, it's inevitably happening in our current life, while we have 5 aggregates bound by delusion and karma. It's happened in all of our previous lives, and it will continue to be the pattern until we are able to extricate ourselves from psychic existence. So the next point, separation from the pleasant, is the flip side of the first. So our experience of life is framed around what we view as pleasant and unpleasant. When our mental factor of contact classifies an object as pleasant, we have happy feelings, then we want more and more of our happy feelings. We want to be in contact with the objects or the experiences that produce those happy feelings, and we want that to go on continuously. We never ever want to be separated from the things that bring us happiness, contentment, and satisfaction. So this includes all of the things that are most valuable most important and meaningful to us. So our family, our home, our friends, perhaps our most prized possessions, all of the activities that we enjoy and that we find particularly meaningful. If we could, we would never ever want to be separated from them. We just want to go on experiencing the happiness that they bring into our lives. But sooner or later, it is inevitable that we're going to be separated from everything or experience that we classify as pleasant. And the reason for this is impermanence. So all of the things that we enjoy, that we value, that we find pleasant, they are impermanent. We ourselves are impermanent, changing moment by moment. And that means that eventually the relationship that we are in with everything we find pleasant will change. It will end. When this happens, then we know that this is a cause of suffering. That's why it's included here in the classification of the eight. One of the most serious and difficult is when a person who is really close to us passes away. Incredibly disruptive, often to our peace of mind. The experience of grief when we're separated from the people who are most dear to us in our life, we know can really make it very difficult to experience any pleasure while that grief is dominating our life. We may have a job that we absolutely love, that is so meaningful to us, really important to our life, gives us a sense of purpose and so forth. But through causes and conditions that we can't control, we lose it, we're separated it, and all of a sudden we have to find a different way of living our lives. Our relationships can be so important to us. They can really, again, define our identity. They can be the most important thing to us. They're something that we might want to go on and on and on and complete experiencing, but ultimately those experiences will end. And when they do, that can cause us suffering. And even before any of these things happen, often while we still have prized possessions, we have a wonderful job, we're with people that we love, often our happiness can be disrupted by the awareness that they're not going to last forever and by the fear that we might lose them at some time. So all of these are examples of this sixth type of suffering. The seventh one is, again, it is not gaining what we desire. So again, this arises from this pattern or habit we have of dividing the world up into pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. So we're continuously aspiring to gain things that we don't currently have, or experiences that we don't currently enjoy, but that we would like to have. So again, we might be dominated by the wish to get a particular type of job. We may have such a strong aspiration to do a particular type of work, to be in a particular type of position, to work with a particular type of organisation. It's so important to us. Put such an effort to get a particular job, and it may or may not work. We may long to be in a relationship with a particular person that we're attracted to. We may aspire for success in our business. We may really be dominated by the thought that what I need to do is to become financially secure. So once I'm financially secure, I don't have to worry about the rent or the mortgage. I know that my material conditions are okay. Well, then I'll be able to relax. We might aspire to own a particular house or to own a particular type of car, and sometimes this works. So we have these aspirations, and sometimes we're able to realise the things that are really important to us. It's almost certain, though, that we're not going to be successful in realising every aspiration that we have in life. And when we're trying to secure these things that we value, that we think are going to be important, there's always worry and uncertainty about whether we're going to be successful or not. So we can put in a huge effort to studying over years and years and years. We can spend so much time and effort trying to develop our business. We can really be focused on the fact We want to do the right thing for our kids. It's so important to us that our kids get into a particular school. We might think that it's so important that I'm really careful about my relationship. I really look after it so that it's a successful relationship. But the reality is, as well as we try, it's not possible to control everything, and we may or may not succeed in getting what we want in any particular case. And when we don't get what we want, then we can be left feeling very disappointed and frustrated, and can become consumed by feelings of failure. It doesn't necessarily have to happen that way, but while we are in a cyclic existence and have this mental pattern of always thinking that there's something else that we need in order to be securely happy, content, or satisfied, then we are set up to have this type of experience. As Geshe says on page 399 of Path to Enlightenment, while we're in cyclic existence, there is no end to frustration. These experiences will inevitably come about. The eighth one is called having aggregates that are the basis of suffering. So this is a little more abstract than the previous seven. So the previous seven, we can look at them and easily understand what it is that they're talking about. We can think about particular events in our own experience that fall under that category. But this is saying that while we have five aggregates, which simplify, if we want to simplify, we can think about that as our body and mind. That isn't entirely accurate, but we can think about it in simple terms as our body and mind. While we have a body and mind that is shaped, directed, and conditioned by delusion and karma, then we are inevitably going to come across the experience of suffering. And again, this is evident from what we've talked about when we talked about the mental factors of discrimination, contact, and feeling. This potential to experience suffering is embedded in the very way that our mind currently functions, the way that we experience things, the way we take things, the way we respond to them moment by moment. While in cyclic existence, these things are going to be, the sensory data is going to be bowled up to us, and based on our karma, we will, without wishing, without any effort on our part, we frame them as pleasant or unpleasant, and the feelings of happiness or unhappiness arise as a result. So it's not as if we can do absolutely nothing about this. So we can develop mindfulness of mind, we can get a better understanding of the way that we respond to the things we experience, and we can also be mindful of our reactions to the feelings of attachment or aversion that we have to objects that come up with us. We can, if the way that we react to objects that appear unhelpful, so if we have strong attachment or strong anger, we can become aware of that and restrain those reactions. But it's difficult to change that in a fundamental way. It's difficult to suddenly change our mind stream so that we can say, well, instead of regarding this person that I'm seeing as unpleasant, as my worst enemy, I can just flip and think about them as my dearest friend. We don't have the power to do that yet because of karma, because that appearance is coming from karma. While our five aggregates are bound by delusion and karma, this straitjacket of experiencing things in a particular way is repeated over and over again. That means that we are limited that we have limited control over our experiences moment by moment. We never really know what is around the corner, what's going to be bowled up to us next, and we never really know whether it's going to be something pleasant or unpleasant. While we are bound by delusion and karma, we're definitely going to experience the results of our karma, unless they're purified in the case of negative karma, or unless they're destroyed in the case of positive karma. Although, as Path to Enlightenment, the karma chapter explains, we can't actually destroy positive karmas, but we can greatly weaken their ability to produce happiness. So Geshe summarises this by saying that while we're in cyclic existence, we have these five aggregates, they're bound by delusion and karma. It's as if our own body and mind is like a magnet that is continuously drawing the experience of suffering to us. Geshe then goes on to talk about the 6 sufferings. So this explanation begins on page 400. And the 6 types of suffering are uncertainty, dissatisfaction, discarding our body repeatedly, being reborn again and again, constant change of status, and loneliness. So the experience, so again, these are things, perhaps with the exception of 3 and 4, but the other 4 are things that we can relate to easily in our current experience in this life. So uncertainty, we can ask ourselves, well, what's my health going to be like in a year from now? Am I going to be in great health? Is my life going to be transformed by being in a state of very poor health, for example? People get difficult diagnoses out of the blue anytime. What's my situation going to be like 12 months from now? Am I going to be alive a year from now? As we know from the teachings on impermanence, the time of death is completely uncertain. Are we going to be alive or not a year from now? We can ask that not only about ourselves, but about the people who are closest to us right now. What is their situation going to be like a week from now, a month from now, a year from now? If we're currently working, am I still going to have my current job a year from now? If when we're working, so much of our life and time is taken up with the activities we do in our job, with the people that we're with in our job, if that changes, it actually completely changes the pattern of our life. What's it going to look like a year from now? We've all been through COVID the last couple of years. What are things going to look like a year from now? Is there going to be another variant? Are we going to be locked down again? Could the variant be much worse? Will there be another pandemic, a different type of virus? Science tells us there will be at some time. Will it be next year? Will it be 10 years? Will it be a century from now? We just don't know. Our life's constantly changing. The lives of others around us are constantly changing. Our health goes up and down. Our conditions go up and down. Our mental health changes continuously. Everything about our experience is subject to causes and conditions. Our job can be really important to us. Our company can be taken over. That's happened to me. That happened to me 4 times during my career and completely changed things. In my case, it worked out mostly quite well, but we never know in each particular case whether it's going to work out well, if we're going to have a job at the end of it or not. Our boss can disappear. I've had a couple of cases where I had a really good boss who disappeared, and the boss who came in wasn't so good and sacked everybody, including me. And I've had cases where one boss left and a really new boss came. We just don't know which way it's going to go, and these things come out of the blue. In the last job where my really good boss left, I had the impression that she'd be there forever. She loved her job. She was really respected in the company. Everybody in the team was really, really good friends. It just worked really, really well. And in my way, the way I was thinking about it, I'm really set up here. Got a job I really like, I'm working for a boss I really like, and then one day, out of the blue, she tells us that she's leaving. And everything changed just like that. Then a few months later, then a very difficult person came in. She had her own views. She got rid of the whole team. And out of nowhere, just in the space of one morning, everything had changed. We never know. Never know. Our relationship seems to be going along just fine, or at least that's our perspective on it. But then suddenly it can go pear-shaped without any sort of warning. There are families who 2 years ago, everybody was close, got on really well because of that pandemic, because of some of the disagreements and tension that came out of that. Then there are many families who are now deeply divided by vaccination and similar sort of issues. We've got all of our life's plans mapped out nicely, the next holiday we're going to take, a plan to change our job, maybe we plan to get married, have kids, but then one random event, a call from a doctor, an accident, either for ourselves or somebody else in our life, can completely upend our plans. This is the fault of uncertainty. We're continuously experiencing the results of our own karma. We never know what's going to come next and whether it will be something that we label as pleasant or unpleasant. And when something really big and unexpected and difficult changes come up in our life, it can be really, really difficult to retain our peace of mind. And from a Buddhist point of view, this is the pattern in our current life that we can introspect on, look on our own life, look at the experience of others around us. And there's also there's no certainty as to what our situation is going to be like in our next life. What our next life will be like, according to the teachings on death and rebirth, depends basically on our karma. And in particular, it depends on the karma that is activated, the throwing karma that is activated at the end of this life. And that process is described in the 12 dependent links that we'll come to in chapter 16. And so this is something that every living being in cyclic existence experiences, the fault of uncertainty. The second fault is dissatisfaction. And again, this is a really, really difficult one, because the thing about the dissatisfaction that we all have is that it limits our ability to extract enjoyment from the good conditions that we actually have. I talked about this a bit during the retreat. So if we look at our situation in Australia right now in the 21st century, compared to just about any other situation we could possibly be in any place or any time, it's absolutely fantastic, objectively, if we look at the external conditions that we have. We have a peaceful country, we have abundant food, we have clean water, we have a well-resourced education and health system, and we have freedom to say what we want, to go where we want, to think what we want, and so forth. To anybody who is looking at our situation from another time, so anybody who is looking at our situation as a slave in the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago, they would look at our situation and think, wow, this is the future of humanity. Anybody who is in that situation would have to be continuously happy. Unbelievable conditions. To most people in the world today who are living in much more difficult and challenging material circumstances than we are, they would look at us and think, well, fantastic. If only I were in that situation, if I were in that situation, all of my problems would be solved. We know that we don't have that perspective, and we don't have that perspective because of dissatisfaction, because whatever conditions we have, we soon simply take them for granted and regard them as normal, and through dissatisfaction, we want more and more. What I have at the moment, okay, that's okay, but I want something better. This is the fault of dissatisfaction. And Geshe gives us the example of devas, for example, who have, compared to us, have extraordinary conditions, but they see a deva who is much more powerful, much more wealthy, has much better conditions, and as a result, they can't experience any happiness from their own condition. And of course, we know that there are beings within our own world who are like this, people who have extraordinary wealth. We might think, based on our own situation, well, if I could be as wealthy like that, if I could accumulate, say, $5 million, well then why wouldn't I completely relax? That would be enough, certainly, to see out a comfortable retirement. If I had that, then I could just sit back, relax, meditate, have fun. We know that nobody actually does that. That genuinely people who accumulate $5 million, that's not enough. They say people around them who have $10 million, and the people who have $10 million see people around them who have better houses, who have better technology, who have better conditions, who have yachts, all sorts of extraordinary wealth. So they want $100 million. The people who want $100 million think, well, that's nice, but I can see these uber billionaires who not only have this extraordinary wealth, but have this incredible power and influence in the world. That's what I want. This is the fault of dissatisfaction. Geshe quotes Nagarjuna on this point, who said, always be content. If you know contentment, even though you have no wealth, you are truly rich. I might quickly go through the next two. So the third one is discarding our body repeatedly. In this life, we know that our body is our most prized possession. Instinctively, if our body is in danger, we try to protect it. Our body is with us throughout our life, and it's so close to us that we partly identify ourselves with the body. At the end of this life, nonetheless, however close we feel to our body, however much we prize and look after our body, we say goodbye to it. We have to leave it. We have to discard it. And over the years from now until we do die, our body, step by step, begins to degenerate. It no longer does the things that we want it to or that it was able to do before. From a point of view of rebirth, not only do we have this distressing and disturbing experience of having to completely separate from our body at the time of death, and also of experiencing the decline of our body throughout our life, we're going through that experience in every life. At the end of every life, we go through this disruption and distress of having to separate from this thing that is so integral and intimate to our very being. The other side of that is having to be reborn again and again. So while we are in cyclic existence, while we are reborn into a rebirth within cyclic existence, every life we get a new body in a different form. It might be a human body, it might be a body of the animal realms, or of any of the other beings of the various realms. And in each case that we do that, we have to go through the difficulties of the experience of birth, as explained in the first of the 8 sufferings, the vulnerability of childhood, the limitations of childhood, the confusion of adolescence. If we're in our human realm, we have to go through the whole process of getting an education, finding a job, forming relationships and friendships, finding financial security, dealing with illness and uncertainty, and the 8 sufferings, dissatisfaction, over and over and over again. So this fault of being reborn again and again is the 4th of the 6 faults of psychic existence. So we've got 2 more. We'll come back to those in the next class, and also then we'll talk about the classification of the 3 sufferings that it would be. But if people would like, to be really good to read those and get a sense of those before we look at it at the next class, which will be after the term break. I think it's on 17th of July. We'll come back. So we'll do the dedication prayers. So we'll do the final rim prayer in Tibetan and English, and the general dedication prayer in Tibetan and English. This is on page 30. Tenirindu bele tsognini katayang pa gamshik sakpa lomig mari kidong rowanam andren jawe wampo da juchi demasum pe tsera kuntu jampe yang chi tsewe jeso Temperimpa consang lam jichu, nene rupe jeljun yeju shi, rangi jishin tope lam jine, shudra tsewe rangwe takechi, rowe yichi mumpe seljine, yowe temba yunrin zinjuchi. Temparin chin chogi ma chaba chab chan yampa jope jodene yingche jambo yera chopai pende tere sawaje pasho seje jawe me jun trin lele pedro jangjo lam jirim Taro nyamchi ila pelteshin, yewetse parindo chanjuchi, lamza dope tinchin rujechin, Gelchen Selje Nirang Mingo Zera Kuntu Jewe Nabai Namda Lamdam Rewa Majuche Gangze Depa Jola Jojo Zojin Jola Jampare Doden Anji Tatu Roje Geshe Acharya Thubten Loden. By the two collections, vast as space, amassed with effort for a long time, I have become a chief of conquerors, guide for all beings whose mind's eye is blinded by ignorance. Also in all lives, while not yet come to that, may I become a chief of conquerors, a guide for all beings whose mind's eye is blinded by ignorance. The Manjushri favoured me with his compassion. Finding the supreme path, complete with all stages of the teachings, may I please the conquerors by practicing will. By my precise understanding of the essential points of the path, with skillful means drawn along by strong compassion, and by dispelling the mental darkness of beings, may I uphold the conqueror's teaching for a long time. Where the supreme precious teaching has not spread, also where it has spread would become degenerate, with the mind deeply moved by great compassion. May I make clear this treasure of benefit and bliss. The stages of the path, excellently established by the marvellous deeds of the conquerors and their sons, give glory to the minds of those aspiring for liberation. May the conquerors' deeds be long preserved. May all humans and non-humans who remove the obstructions and establish conditions favourable to cultivating the excellent path never be pardoned for all of their lifetimes from the purest of paths which the Buddhists have praised. When someone makes effort to practice properly the 10 points of conduct of the Supreme Vehicle, may he always be assisted by the mighty protectors, and may oceans of good fortune spread out, reaching all. Sonam Yeshe Sog Sonam Yeshe Lejong Damba Koni Tobasho. By this virtue, may all beings complete the collections of wisdom and merit, and attain the two holy bodies arisen from wisdom and merit. Jangju Sen Chogrim Boche Mache Panam Minye Joche Che Panyamba Me Apaye Gongni Gongdu Pelbasho. May the precious superior mind of enlightenment be generated in those who have not yet generated it, and not decrease in those who have developed it, but increase continuously. Thanks very much, everybody.